bringing you key insights, tips, and advice from the brightest minds in the Canadian franchising industry. This is the Franchise Canada Chats podcast. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. If this is your first time tuning in, my name's Trisha.
And I'm Andrew Shop, editor of Franchise Canada magazine.
And once again, we've got a really good episode for you guys, especially anyone looking to become a franchisee, because Andrew and I got to visit Jon-Anthony Lui.
Yeah, Trisha, Jon-Anthony is the multi-franchise unit owner of Tutor Doctor, which provides one-on-one tutoring services to students of all ages. He and his wife Clarissa are the proud owners of 10 Tutor Doctor franchise territories in the Greater Toronto Area. Since starting in 2009, he has received several awards with the brand, including the Hall of Fame Award and the 2016 Tutor Doctor Top Performance Award.
And in this episode, we cover topics like how to get the investment needed to become a franchisee, the support he has received since opening the business, the advice he would give if he met himself before starting the business, and so much more. Enjoy the episode. Hi, John. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you for joining us today. So, can you tell us a bit about Tutor Doctor?
Sure. Yeah. So, Tutor Doctor, we provide one-on-one in-home tutoring for students of all ages and subjects. I think we're in more than 15 countries, over 500 units, and I'm a franchisee that's located in the North Toronto area in Canada.
And you, correct me if I'm wrong, but you were the youngest Tutor Doctor franchisee to ever join the team, correct?
Like, at some point I was. I don't know if I still am. Yeah, maybe I could drag your rights for a little bit. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about what that was like coming on board at such a young age. What advice would you give to, younger people looking to get into the franchising industry?
Okay. So when I first joined Tutor Doctor, I was 25 years old, had a shaved head, and probably looked like I was 17. And I guess, I had a lot of big hopes and dreams. I always wanted to own my own business. I had that entrepreneur itch, you could say. And starting out, franchising was an adventure. I mean, it still is. What I wanted to do in order to achieve my goals had a lot to do with just my mindset. Because I knew I was younger than most people, so I felt inadequate. I felt like, did I bite off more than I can chew? Are people really going to take me seriously, especially because I did look like I was 17? So yeah, all those thoughts went through my mind. It was quite daunting at first.
So what did you do to prepare for that? Considering that you were young, and what was the mindset that you kind of had to have?
Yeah, it was kind of like ready, set, go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was just preparing myself mentally that it was all going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I could be successful if I gave it enough effort and determination and thought. I was disciplined about it, and if I could learn. So it was just the time came was like I got to give it all or nothing. So.
Good. And so why did you choose Tutor Doctor?
So I've always been involved in franchising to some degree. Mm-hmm. My father was in franchise sales.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of happened to come about that way. I remember in summertime, I would work with my father a bit on the phone he was in franchise development, so I was kind of pre-qualifying some candidates. I learned how to talk on the phone and ask questions and that sort of thing. And he always told me about the people that he worked with, people who owned the company, the senior management. He had a lot of respect for them. So when he passed away, I was 21, and I called some of the people in his phone just to kind of get an idea of what they were doing and you know, if I could learn something. So I got in touch with the people that own Tutor Doctor today. And originally they brought me on board, said, hey, if you've got some experience in selling franchises, why don't you come work with us in that capacity? And I was working with a team. My father's old vice president took me on, trained me, and I kind of started that way. So I learned a lot about the company before I was actually offered the opportunity to become a franchisee. So that didn't needed.
So yeah, I know you franchised you with running this business with your wife.
Yeah.
So can you talk to us about that? What it's like running a business with your wife? How did she get on board as well?
So she got on board out of sheer necessity.
Okay.
Because, like 6 months into running my own franchise, I'm terrible at paperwork.
Yeah.
And trying to you know, enter everything in when you need to, and so I was growing the business. I was out there doing the sales and the marketing, and all that other stuff, the administrative stuff, was kind of piling up on my desk. And I would, you know, put it into file folders, and my wife could just see the stack rising, like slowly, right? So so one wish is, you know, can I help you out? Like, because you need help. You're just kind of burying yourself in paperwork, right? I said, sure, please, whatever you can do. So she kind of just jumped in and just kind of worked for free for a bit, you know. And then eventually we're like, hey, maybe we could do this together. Like, you've got a very unique skill set where she can do all the administrative, she can multitask, right? And I could be sort of like the face of the company. So we started doing that, and it's been now nine something years. So yeah.
Wow, working together. That's
working together. Yeah.
What are the sort of challenges? I guess I'm pretty sure there's a lot of positives, but working with
let's get into the challenges.
Yeah. What are the challenges of working with your wife?
There's definitely challenges. I mean, on top of relationship challenges, right? Like it's hard work to keep a marriage going and maintaining a marriage. That's definitely hard work. We were kind of newly married at the time too, so you get the brunt of, you know, all the communication challenges, balancing things, differences of opinion. So that we had to deal with anyways. When you throw the business on top of that, that can be challenging, especially when you have different views. So one of the things that helped us was we had distinct roles, and our roles didn't really overlap. So, you know, you didn't have two CEOs in the company. You had one person that was dealing with operations and that sort of thing, and you had another person that was dealing with sales or finance or whatever. So the challenge, if I could sum it up and just kind of put it simply, is really more, you can talk about work all the time. So you bring it home with you. You could be in the middle of dinner and you're talking about work. You're like, well, I got to say this right now because I might forget it, right? And meanwhile, like, maybe it's not the best time to talk about work because you can burn yourself out. So you can talk about work at 10 p.m. at night. You can also talk about work at 10 a.m. in the morning, right? So it's just kind of learning how to shut it off, when to shut it off, setting some clear boundaries, agreeing on the boundaries, so you kind of have that commitment to each other. Yeah,
establishing that kind of work-life balance, making sure that it's...
Yeah. And then you just kind of work towards it. You'll never perfect it, but you just keep working on it.
So tell us a bit about the Tutor Doctor concept specifically, and what drew you to the educational services sector.
Yeah. So I've sort of always been in education. Before Tutor Doctor, I was working with an e-learning development company. What we did was we helped universities, colleges, government agencies to bring their training online. So through that, you know, I've learned a lot about education, pedagogy, you know, how it has to be engaging, and particularly how to do that online, which then was a little bit ahead of its time. Not everybody was willing to invest in that kind of technology or design and development. So that's how I got into education. So this was kind of like a natural fit because I'm really excited and passionate about working with youth, young ones, and seeing what they can do and accomplish, and helping to instill confidence in them. So Tutor Doctor is really about changing the trajectory of students' lives. So when a student's life intersects with Tutor Doctor, the path that they were on, the trajectory, it should totally change. And students change by varying degrees, right? The impact by varying degrees, but it should always be a better situation with academic support, with tutoring, with an academic coach. You should always be in a better situation than without one. And so that's what I really love about the company is we're changing the trajectory of students' lives, which is really awesome.
And how did you get the investments because franchises are pretty expensive. So what did you do? What was your...
So I borrowed some money.
That's a good one. Okay.
So I was able to do that.
Yeah.
And it was a mixture of, going to my bank, telling them my hopes and dreams. And, I think they kind of felt sorry for me as a little kid. Like, okay, we'll give you a little bit of I had an unsecured line of credit back then. I don't think that's even possible today. Yeah. Unsecured. So that was kind of cool. On top of that, I was able to borrow some money from family, that sort of thing. Okay. And then I did a budget. I get newly married. I think what kind of helped us was we decided to rent for the first year and just kind of get settled and just, without putting the pressure to buy a house and all that kind of stuff. So we just tried to be as simple and frugal as possible. So what do we really need and what do we not really need? Do a budget that way so that way I can keep my living costs to a reasonable amount, which allowed me then to reinvest into the business and to keep reinvesting in the business.
What are some of the advantages of investing in a franchise that, like Tutor Doctor, that doesn't require a physical location? So you don't need to be tied down to a lease. What are some of the advantages there?
Yeah. Well, just like, I made that example about choosing to rent versus buying a house. You just don't have that pressure of a huge mortgage over your head, right? Buying a franchise already is a big commitment. Buying one that can start off home-based it makes it a little bit easier so that you can use those resources towards marketing or operational expenses. There's things that will be focused on growing the business as opposed to just setting the business up. So for this model, it worked really well.
And you talked about marketing there. Tell us a bit about your experience as a franchisee handling those different departments. A lot of people might have a misconception that when you invest in a franchise, the franchisor has all the control over the marketing, that type of thing. Tell us about your initiatives that were unique to you as a franchisee.
Sure. I guess Tutor Doctor is very open to trying things and seeing what works. We're not a brand that's been around for hundreds of years. We don't have we have guidelines, but we're not as strict as some of the other brands that I've heard about, where it's you can do this, you can't do this, you can do this, you can't do this, right? So that kind of plays in our favor because there's a lot of things that we try that fail, but there's a lot of things that we try that work too. So just being able to try different things, tracking the numbers, being able to make data-driven decisions is really key. So we have a really good understanding of the fundamentals that can help us determine if a marketing initiative is a success or not, if it can be scalable or not. So I think that's really good about Tutor Doctor. That's one of the blessings so far.
Just going off that, what kind of support do you get from Tutor Doctor?
Yeah, there's a lot of support. I mean, we've got marketing departments, we've got training department, we've got those that help us with finances. There's so many things. It's almost like at times you can feel overwhelmed with all the support that is
That's a good thing.
You kind of have to pick and choose.
Yeah.
What you'll take advantage of and what you might have to put on the back burner for later.
Mm-hmm.
But if I need help in some talking points for this interview, I get it. Yeah. If I need some help with graphic design for a direct mail campaign I want to experiment with, I get it. Mm-hmm. So there's definitely a lot of support. Yeah.
Okay. And then, so, what kind of challenges, I guess, just as a franchisee, did you face early on? Even though you had all the support, were there times, I guess, you felt overwhelmed or you didn't know what to do or anything like that?
Yeah, absolutely. When you first start, it's just yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of wear all the hats, right? And as you grow, you have to hire, train,
mm-hmm.
fire. You got to manage people.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I took my business to the next level, there was this overwhelming feeling of, can I do this?
Mm-hmm.
There was this, some call it a ceiling of complexity, where your problems are complicated and you're not quite sure how to break through that particular barrier.
Okay.
So you have to deal with all those feelings, right?
Yeah. And how did you overcome them? I know you mentioned mindset before. Were there any other kind of things from your background that you kind of drew or used to help you with that?
One thing I noticed about myself is I like to talk to a lot of different people
mm-hmm.
who I feel might have been through a similar situation. So, when I'm faced with a challenge, I'll talk to 5, 6, 7 people, kind of like a roster of mentors and offices, and I'll kind of ask them, have you ever been in this situation? What did you do? Well, this is what I'm thinking. This is how I'm feeling. What about this? What about that? This seems impossible. Like, what do you, and you kind of just talk it out, and you realize that there's nothing that doesn't have a solution. I just have to be willing to execute and follow through on what I've learned from others. So if somebody gives me a good piece of advice and I feel like it makes sense and we've got a good track record where it's worked for them, then it's my responsibility to follow through and actually do it, no matter how hard it might be. I have to execute, and I think that's one thing I've learned is execution is key.
So run us through a typical day as a Tutor Doctor franchisee. What does that look like for anyone listening that might be interested in investing in a franchise? What could their day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so I can speak from my personal day-to-day. Not that every experience is the same, but for me, I've got annual goals, which get broken down into quarterly initiatives, which then get broken down into monthly things I must do, which then get broken down into weekly things I have to do, and even daily. So I always know what my top few things are every day. For me as a franchisee, those things span, strategy, marketing, leading the team, managing the sales team, helping the team out with difficult issues that arise and challenges, putting things in place to make everyone's job easier, trying to make work fun for everybody, building culture, all those sorts of things. So constantly just trying to work towards those goals.
If you had one piece of advice for yourself, you have to do this all over again, what would you tell yourself?
Yeah, I always get asked that question, and I find it a really difficult question to answer. And I'll just tell you my thought process, right? Because I know people are kind of looking for the, what would you change? What would you do differently? And I would tell myself this, and then that means that I would get an even greater result faster. Mm-hmm. But then I also think I wouldn't be who I am today if I didn't go through things the way that I did. If I didn't struggle, if I didn't fail, then I wouldn't be who I am today. So I always kind of revert back to doing the same thing all over again. It's really hard because that's the reality of what I did. And to try to imagine an alternate reality of just, I have a hard time doing it.
And tell us a bit about the rewards of owning a Tutor Doctor franchise, not just the financial rewards, but there's a lot of giving back to the community in terms of, helping change kids' trajectories for the rest of their lives. Like, tell us a bit about the reward there.
The reward is huge, and you can't always see it, right? Like you can't see what every student becomes just because life changes. You might lose touch or whatever the case is. One thing for me that kind of helps me to see that is we've had students where they're like really struggling with math, as an example, and they work with Tutor Doctor, they get the help that they need, and then you don't hear from them for a little bit. They finish university, all that kind of stuff. You might hear, of course, they get honorable mentions or honor roll, and they might get scholarships. They might become the dream, job that they always achieve, like become a doctor, become a firefighter. We've seen that happen. Mm-hmm. But then we've also seen situations where, like, after being a student with Tutor Doctor, they become a tutor for Tutor Doctor. Wow. And then they're helping kids. Mm-hmm. And that's really cool to see because it's like this full circle of, evolution. Like people keep changing and then helping others to change. So you have two arms. One arm is to help yourself and the other arm is to help somebody else, right? Mm-hmm. So you kind of see that linkage, which is really, really awesome.
Has Tutor Doctor had any cases of, kids starting out with the program, developing into a tutor, and then eventually investing themselves in a franchise?
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about those cases?
Absolutely. We've had situations where that exact thing has happened, and franchises are awarded to those because they understand the values, they understand what it's like to be as a client, as someone that works for Tutor Doctor, and then ultimately to be the person that is responsible for their own clients. Mm-hmm. That has happened before. That's kind of cool to see too.
You mentioned values. What are some of those values that you think are necessary to take on running your own business?
Yeah. So I think we have 5 values. Don't ask me to try to remember them all. Curiosity is one of them. Just always being willing to question what is and what could be possible. Sort of how I view it. Ingenuity is another one. I mean, these are all really good ones. Ownership. But I think really the one that stands out to me the most is grit.
Why does that stand out to you the most?
Because whether it's work or your own personal life, let's face it, life happens. Mm-hmm. Stuff can get you down. There's, all these sorts of things that we have to deal with as humans on a day-to-day basis. If you don't have grit or resiliency, it's impossible to sort of like attain a measure of happiness in your life and still know that you have to go through stuff, right? But if you have grit or resiliency, you can face really challenging circumstances, like the death of a loved one or a really big problem that, the biggest problem you've ever faced in life, and still feel happy with who you are on the inside and look for a hopeful future. So I think that's probably my top value, is because without that, kind of everything else doesn't matter.
Yeah. So what's next for you in your business?
It's a great question. It's top secret.
Okay.
No, I'm just joking.
We all waited.
I don't know necessarily.
Okay.
It's a question that I'm asking myself all the time. Once I think I know it, then I change my mind. So stay tuned. Maybe on the next podcast I'll have a better answer for you.
Did you guys hear that? Yeah. Yeah. So,
would you like to have some franchise fun? In the every issue of Franchise Canada magazine, we do a series of franchise fun questions just to help people get to know you on a personal level.
Yeah, sure.
So let me jump in with some sentence starters.
Wait, there's a reason why you didn't send me these questions ahead of time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh boy.
So if you could just complete these sentences. What's the most interesting thing you've done recently is?
Most interesting thing I've done recently. I pretty much stayed in a chalet for like 5 days doing nothing, which I haven't done in a really long time. So over the holiday break, because we're always like doing something, right? But I decided that this time nothing doing it. Is that interesting? I don't know. To me it was. I was like,
To me that's really
I wasn't
interesting.
bored. Yeah, I was just kind of like, just chill out.
In its best form, work is.
It's gotta be fun.
It's franchise fun.
Yeah, that's right. It's franchise fun. It's gotta be something that you look forward to, even though there might be a lot of challenges. It might be really hard. It's gotta be something that you enjoy doing.
My top advice for prospective franchisees
is really understand what they're looking for. Create a checklist if you can on what your criteria is. Try to picture yourself as a franchisee in whatever opportunity you're evaluating, and just be really honest with yourself.
the most important thing in life is.
That's deep.
Family's a really popular answer.
And that's a given.
Food is
The
good.
most important thing in life, I believe, is our relationship with our Creator. Sorry, that's kind of maybe not politically correct, but I honestly believe that we are accountable for how we live our life. I think that's first and foremost, because if you're on good terms there, everything else kind of falls into place.
If you can meet anyone, who would that be? Alive or not?
Fictional.
Yeah. It would be, I would want to see my parents again.
And I think that leads into this.
That's not so fun.
I think that leads into
At least
this
the positive
next
thing,
one.
don't worry.
The person who has had the most positive influence on you as a person and a business person is, would that be your parents, or
That'd be my father, yeah, absolutely.
in what sense?
Just kind of like, I learned a lot at an early age. I learned what hard work was, not giving up, keeping track of your data. I think all those things allowed me to just kind of have a good foundation for, what came my way.
And finally, Canadian franchising is.
Canadian franchising, No. Canadian franchising is full of opportunity. There's so much room for growth, and the culture of Canadians, I think, is especially opportunistic, because we've got so many different cultures and people that just come from all different parts of the world and come here to take advantage of the situation that we're in. So there's lots of opportunity there.
All right. Thank you so much, John, for sitting down with us and going through this, answering all our questions, both tough and easy, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
We really appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the Franchise Canada Chats podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. For more, head to franchisecanada.online.